How does a simple laugh at my husband's pain end with a stack of legal papers on my kitchen table, and my entire family taking sides against me? What happens when the person you think will always forgive you finally decides to fight back, using only the law and cold, hard facts? I should have seen it coming, but when you're drowning in your own justifications, you miss the obvious signs that someone else is quietly building a life raft, and it's not meant for you. The evening it all began, I was sitting in our cramped living room with my sister Jill, sharing a bottle of wine and doing what we did best, dissecting my marriage like amateur therapists. Elliot was in his usual spot at the kitchen table, hunched over his laptop, debugging code for some client whose website had crashed. Again. "Look at him," I whispered to Jill, gesturing toward my husband with my wine glass. "It's like living with a robot. He comes home, eats dinner in silence, works until midnight, and goes to bed. When's the last time he asked me how my day was?" Jill rolled her eyes dramatically. "Morwenna, I don't know how you do it. Derek would never ignore me like that. A woman has needs, you know? Emotional needs." "Exactly." I felt vindicated. "Jonas, you remember Jonas from my office? He actually listens when I talk. Yesterday, I mentioned feeling stressed about Tess's parent-teacher conference, and he spent 20 minutes helping me think through questions to ask. Elliot just grunted and said, 'You'll handle it fine,' without even looking up from his screen." "Jonas sounds sweet," Jill said, raising an eyebrow. "And single, right?" I laughed, perhaps a little too loudly. "Very single, and very attentive. It's refreshing to have someone actually care about what I'm thinking." From the kitchen came the sound of Elliot's chair scraping against the floor. He was getting up for more coffee, moving through our apartment like a ghost. I watched him pour the coffee, his shoulders tense, his face expressionless. Even his movements seemed mechanical. "Seriously, Moore," Jill continued, "you're 33. You shouldn't have to live like this. You deserve someone who appreciates you." "I know, right? Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just stopped trying so hard to make this work." I took another sip of wine, feeling bold. Maybe I should focus on people who actually value my company. Jill leaned forward conspiratorially. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Before I could answer, our 7-year-old daughter Tess appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, you're being loud. I can't sleep." "Sorry, baby," I said, immediately switching to mom mode. "Aunt Jill and I were just talking. Go back to bed." "Why were you talking about Jonas?" Tess asked innocently. "Is he the man who sends you the smiley face messages?" My blood froze. Jill shot me a look. From the kitchen I heard the coffee mug hit the counter a little too hard. "Sweetie, grown-ups talk about lots of people from work," I said quickly. "Now go to bed. I'll come tuck you in a minute." Tess nodded and padded back down the hall. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close before turning to Jill. "Kids notice everything," Jill said quietly. "She doesn't understand what she's hearing," I replied, but my confidence was shaking. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Jonas. "Miss you already. Same time tomorrow." I smiled despite myself, typing back a quick "absolutely" before setting the phone down. The validation felt good. Someone wanted to see me, looked forward to my company, missed me when I wasn't around. "You're glowing," Jill observed. "When's the last time Elliot made you smile like that?" I couldn't remember. That was the problem. Elliot and I had become roommates who shared a mortgage and a child. We functioned efficiently. Bills got paid, Tess got fed and driven to school. The apartment stayed reasonably clean. But there was no joy, no connection, no spark. "I'm not doing anything wrong," I said, more to myself than to Jill. "I'm just talking to someone who appreciates me." "Of course you're not doing anything wrong," Jill agreed. "You're being human. You have emotional needs, and if Elliot can't meet them, that's his problem, not yours." I nodded, feeling justified. Elliot had created the situation with his coldness, his emotional unavailability. If I found comfort elsewhere, wasn't that his fault for not being the husband I needed? After Jill left, I went to tuck Tess into bed. She was already asleep, her small face peaceful in the dim light from the hallway. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you," hoping she couldn't sense the guilt creeping into my chest. Walking back to the living room, I noticed Elliot's laptop was closed and his coffee mug was in the sink. He must have gone to bed early. Unusual for him. I assumed he was just tired from work. I didn't realize he'd been standing in the hallway during my conversation with Jill, listening to every word. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable pattern of deception. I'd started meeting Jonas at a coffee shop near my office during lunch breaks, and occasionally after work under the guise of mandatory overtime. The lies came surprisingly easily. "My supervisor is really cracking down on productivity," I told Elliot one evening when he asked why I'd been getting home so late. "She's making me stay until all the filing is caught up. It's not fair, but you know how it is in this economy. I can't afford to make waves." Elliot nodded absently, not looking up from his laptop. "That sucks. Want me to order pizza for dinner?" See? This was exactly the problem. I'd just told him I was being mistreated at work, and his response was to order pizza. No outrage on my behalf, no questions about whether I could talk to HR, no emotional support whatsoever. Just pizza. Jonas, on the other hand, was furious when I told him the same story. "That's completely unacceptable," he said, leaning across our small table at Grind Coffee. "You're an excellent administrator. I've seen how organized and efficient you are. Your supervisor should be grateful to have you, not punishing you with extra hours." "Thank you," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. "It's just nice to have someone understand how hard this is for me." Jonas reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You deserve so much better, Morwenna, in every aspect of your life." The touch sent electricity through me. When was the last time Elliot had held my hand? When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Jonas was looking at me right now? Like I was interesting, desirable, worth his full attention. "I keep thinking about what you said yesterday," Jonas continued, his thumb tracing small circles on my palm. "About feeling invisible in your own home. That's not how a marriage should be." "I know," I whispered, "but I have Tess to think about. And honestly, I don't know if Elliot would even care if I left. He might actually prefer it." "Any man who doesn't appreciate you is a fool," Jonas said firmly. "You're intelligent, beautiful, funny, everything a guy could want. If he can't see that, it's his loss." I felt myself blushing. "You're just being nice." "I'm being honest." Jonas lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles softly. "You light up every room you walk into, Morwenna. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." By the time I got home that evening, I was practically floating. For the first time in years, I felt attractive, valued, appreciated. I found myself humming while I helped Tess with her homework. "Mummy, you seem happy," Tess observed, looking up from her math worksheet. "I am happy, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have good days at work." "Did something good happen with Jonas?" she asked innocently. My pen froze mid-correction. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you always smile when you talk about Jonas, like when Daddy used to bring you flowers." Out of the mouths of babes, Elliot used to bring me flowers, daisies from the grocery store, nothing fancy but thoughtful. When had he stopped doing that? When had we stopped doing all the little things that made marriage feel like more than just shared responsibilities? "Jonas is just a nice coworker," I told Tess. "Now let's focus on your math." But her observation stuck with me. Was I that transparent? If a 7-year-old could see the change in my demeanor, what about Elliot? Later that evening, my mother called to check in. "How are things, sweetheart? You sound different, lighter." "I'm good, Mom. Work's been busy, but I'm handling it." "And how's Elliot? I haven't talked to him in ages." "He's the same. You know Elliot. Work, sleep, repeat." "Marriage takes effort from both people," Mom said carefully. "Are you two making time for each other?" I almost laughed. "It's hard to make time for someone who doesn't seem interested in spending it with you." "Oh, honey, Have you talked to him about how you're feeling? Mom, I've tried. He's just not emotionally available. Some people aren't built for deep connections, I guess. That doesn't sound like the Elliot who courted you for 6 months before you'd agree to a first date, Mum said gently. But I didn't want to hear about the old Elliot. That version of my husband, attentive, romantic, eager to please, had disappeared somewhere between marriage and parenthood and the daily grind of adult life. The current Elliot was a stranger who happened to share my last name. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, Elliot appeared in the bathroom doorway. Morwenna, can we talk? My heart skipped. Had he overheard my conversation with Mom? About what? I've been looking at our bank statements. There are some charges I don't recognize. Coffee shops, ride shares downtown, and your phone bill shows a lot of calls to a number I don't know. The blood drained from my face, but I forced myself to stay calm. The coffee shop is near my office. I've been grabbing lunch there when I have to work late, and the ride shares are because I missed the bus a couple times. As for phone calls, I talk to a lot of people for work. Why are you suddenly monitoring my spending? I'm not monitoring anything. I'm trying to balance our budget, and I noticed some unusual patterns. Unusual patterns? I turned to face him fully, crossing my arms. Elliot, are you seriously questioning how I spend $20 on coffee? I work hard to contribute to this household. If I want to buy myself lunch instead of packing a sandwich, I think I've earned that right. He held up his hands. I'm not attacking you. I'm just trying to understand. No, you're being controlling. And frankly, it's not attractive. I pushed past him into the bedroom. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to me as you do to our bank statements, we wouldn't have these problems. Elliot followed me, his voice quiet but persistent. What problems, Morwenna? Talk to me. What's really going on? For a moment, I almost told him everything, almost explained how lonely I felt, how disconnected we'd become, how desperate I was for someone to see me as more than just a mother and bill payer. But then I remembered Jonas's hand in mine, the way he looked at me like I was precious, and I felt angry instead of vulnerable. The problem is that you've checked out of this marriage, I said, pulling on my pajamas with sharp, angry movements. You treat me like a roommate. When's the last time you asked about my day? When's the last time you touched me without it being perfunctory? When's the last time you made me feel like you actually wanted me here? Elliot was quiet for a long moment. I didn't realize you felt that way. Of course you didn't realize. You don't pay attention to anything that doesn't involve code or computers. That's not fair, isn't it? I turned to look at him, this man I'd married 8 years ago who now felt like a stranger. When's the last time we had a real conversation, Elliot? When's the last time you made me laugh? When's the last time you made me feel like I mattered to you? He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I'm trying to provide for our family, he said finally. Providing isn't the same as connecting, I replied, but I guess some people aren't capable of both. I climbed into bed and turned off my bedside lamp, effectively ending the conversation. Elliot stood in the doorway for another minute before turning off his own light and settling into his side of the bed. We lay there in the darkness, not touching, the space between us feeling like miles instead of inches. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. Hope you had a good evening. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I smiled in the darkness and typed back, me too. Sweet dreams. If Elliot noticed the glow from my phone, he didn't say anything, but I felt him shift slightly, turning away from me toward the wall. Good, I thought. Maybe now he'd understand what it felt like to be ignored. The monthly dinner at Elliot's parents' house had always been a source of tension, but this particular Sunday felt different from the moment we walked through the door. Barbara Pierce, my mother-in-law, greeted us with her usual efficiency. A quick hug for Tess, a nod for me, and a longer embrace for her son. You look tired, Elliot, she observed, studying his face with maternal concern. Just busy with work, he replied, but I noticed the dark circles under his eyes that I'd been too distracted to see at home. Derek, Elliot's father, was setting the table with military precision. Everything had to be perfect for Barbara's Sunday dinners. The good china, cloth napkins, water glasses filled exactly 3/4 full. Morwenna's been working late a lot too, Elliot said as we settled into our usual seats. Her supervisor has been really demanding lately. I felt a flush of irritation. Why was he bringing up my work schedule? It's just a busy period, I said quickly. Nothing I can't handle. Still, it must be hard on Tess when you're both working so much, Barbara said, reaching over to squeeze our daughter's hand. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm okay, Grandma, Tess said quietly. Mommy comes home late sometimes, but Daddy makes good grilled cheese. I'm sure he does, Barbara said, but her eyes flicked to me with something that might have been disapproval. As we ate Barbara's pot roast, the conversation turned to neighborhood gossip and Tess's upcoming school play. I was only half listening, my mind wandering to the text conversation I'd had with Jonas that morning. He'd sent me a photo of his breakfast, perfectly plated eggs Benedict from some trendy cafe downtown, with the message, "Thinking of you." Such a simple gesture, but it made me feel special. Seen. When was the last time Elliot had thought to share a moment of his day with me? Morwenna, Barbara's voice cut through my reverie. I asked how you're enjoying your new responsibilities at work. Oh, they're fine. Challenging, but fine. It must be nice to have supportive colleagues during such a demanding time, she continued, and something in her tone made me look up sharply. Yes, everyone's been very understanding, I said carefully. That's good. It's important to have people you can rely on when things get stressful at home. Barbara's smile was perfectly pleasant, but her eyes were shrewd. Elliot mentioned you've been getting a lot of support calls from work lately. My phone buzzed in my purse. Without thinking, I glanced down to check it, a habit that had become automatic over the past few weeks. It was Jonas. Missing your smile today. Hope dinner isn't too boring. I couldn't help but grin. Someone was thinking about me, missing me, wanting to make me laugh even when we were apart. Something amusing? Elliot asked quietly. Just Jill being Jill, I lied, putting my phone face down on the table. She's having drama with her neighbor again. Jill certainly has a lot of drama, Barbara observed. How is your sister, by the way? Still encouraging you to live your best life? The way she said it made it sound like a disease. Jill thinks I should prioritize my own happiness, I said defensively. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course not, Derek interjected diplomatically. Everyone deserves to be happy. Absolutely, I agreed. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices to get the happiness you deserve. Elliot set down his fork. What kind of difficult choices? The question hung in the air like smoke. I felt everyone's eyes on me. Barbara's sharp and knowing, Derek's uncomfortable, Tess's confused, and Elliot's unreadable. I just mean that sometimes you have to stop waiting for other people to make you happy and take control of your own life, I said, my voice getting stronger. Some people are content with the status quo, but others need more. More what? Elliot asked. More connection, more appreciation, more attention. I was aware I was treading on dangerous ground, but something reckless in me wanted to push. Some people are naturally emotionally available, and others, I shrugged. Others what, Morwenna? Barbara's voice was ice cold. Others are more comfortable with computers than people, I finished, looking directly at Elliot. The silence that followed was deafening. Tess looked like she might cry. Derek suddenly became very interested in his green beans. Barbara's lips were pressed into a thin line. My phone buzzed again. This time, I deliberately picked it up and read the message, smiling as I typed a quick response. Really? Elliot's voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. You're going to do that here? At my parents' dinner table? Do what? Check my phone. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were in a technology-free zone. I laughed, but it sounded forced even to my own ears. God, Elliot, you're so paranoid. It's just work. Work texts on Sunday evening that make you smile like that? Some of us have colleagues who actually have personalities, I snapped. Some of us work with people who know how to have a conversation that doesn't involve server configurations and debugging. Barbara stood up abruptly. Tess, sweetheart, why don't you come help Grandma get dessert ready? I want to stay with Mommy and Daddy, Tess said in a small voice. Now, Tess, Barbara said firmly, and our daughter reluctantly followed her grandmother into the kitchen. Derek cleared his throat. Maybe we should— No, Dad, Elliot said, his eyes never leaving my face. I think Morwenna has something she wants to say. Don't you, Morwenna? The challenge in his voice should have warned me to back down. Instead, it made me angry. How dare he put me on the spot like this? How dare he try to make me look like the villain when he was the one who'd emotionally abandoned our marriage? Fine, I said, setting my phone down with a sharp click. You want to know what I think? I think some people in this room need to take a long, hard look at what they bring to their relationships. I think some people are so busy being reliable and responsible that they forget how to be human. I think some people expect their wives to be grateful for the bare minimum while they sleepwalk through their marriages. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Elliot's face had gone completely blank, a look I'd learned to recognize as his way of shutting down when emotions got too intense. And I think, I continued, my voice rising slightly, that when someone finds connection and appreciation elsewhere, maybe the question shouldn't be, how could you do this? But what did I do to drive you away? The words hung in the air like a confession. Derek's fork clattered to his plate. From the kitchen came the sound of Barbara's sharp intake of breath. She'd been listening from the doorway. Elliot nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. I see. Do you? I challenged. Because I've been trying to get you to see for months, and you've been too busy with your precious work to notice that your wife was drowning. Drowning, Elliot repeated. Is that what you call it? My phone buzzed again. Without thinking, I glanced at it. Jonas had sent a photo of a sunset with the caption, "Beautiful things make me think of you." This time, I didn't try to hide my smile. Elliot saw it. Derek saw it. Barbara, standing frozen in the kitchen doorway with Tess beside her, saw it. I think, Elliot said very quietly, that we should go home now. He stood up, his movements careful and controlled. Dad, Mum, thank you for dinner. Tess, get your jacket. But we haven't had dessert yet, Tess protested. We'll have dessert at home, Elliot said, his voice gentle when he spoke to our daughter, but cold when he looked at me. Say goodbye to Grandma and Grandpa. The drive home was silent except for Tess's questions from the back seat. Why did we leave early? Why is everyone mad? Did I do something wrong? No, baby, I assured her. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups just have disagreements. About what? Elliot and I exchanged a look in the rearview mirror. About grown-up things, he said finally. Don't worry about it. But I was starting to worry. The look on Barbara's face, the way Derek couldn't meet my eyes, the careful control in Elliot's voice. Something had shifted tonight, something that couldn't be undone. When we got home, Elliot went straight to our bedroom and closed the door. I could hear him on the phone, his voice too low to make out words, but the tone serious and urgent. I helped Tess get ready for bed, read her a story, and tucked her in with extra kisses. Mommy, she said as I was turning off her light. Yes, sweetheart? Are you and Daddy getting divorced like Emma's parents? My heart clenched. Why would you ask that? Because Emma's mommy used to smile at her phone a lot too, and then her daddy moved out. I sat back down on her bed, smoothing her hair. Daddy and I are just going through a rough patch. All married people do sometimes. It doesn't mean we're getting divorced. But even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. When I finally went to our bedroom, Elliot was sitting on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed. We need to talk, he said. Elliot, I'm sorry about tonight. I was frustrated and I took it out on your family. That wasn't fair. No, he said quietly. It wasn't fair. But I think we're past apologies now, don't you? Something in his tone made my blood run cold. What do you mean? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but resignation. I mean, I think you've made your choice, Morwenna, and now I need to make mine. The end final character count. 18,247 characters. I need to continue and expand this story to reach the required 40,000, 50,000 characters. Let me continue with the remaining chapters. The week following the disastrous dinner at his parents' house, Elliot became a ghost in our own home. He left for work earlier, came home later, and when he was there, he moved through our apartment like he was visiting a place he used to live. The change was so dramatic that even Tess noticed. "Why doesn't Daddy talk anymore?" she asked me one morning as I was braiding her hair for school. "Daddy's just stressed about work, sweetheart," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. The truth was, Elliot's silence was starting to unnerve me. I'd expected anger, accusations, demands for explanations. Instead, he'd retreated into a calm, polite distance that felt more threatening than any explosion would have been. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jonas was intensifying. Our coffee dates had evolved into longer lunches, and twice he'd convinced me to meet him at his studio apartment after work. Nothing physical had happened, not yet, but the emotional intimacy was intoxicating. "You seem different," Jonas observed one afternoon as we sat on his couch, my head resting on his shoulder while he played with my hair. "Lighter, like you're finally letting yourself be happy." "I am happy," I said and meant it. "For the first time in years, I feel like myself again." "Good. You deserve to feel this way all the time, not just when you're sneaking away from your real life." I lifted my head to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to stop sneaking. Maybe it's time to be honest about what you want." The suggestion sent a thrill of fear and excitement through me. "Jonas, I have a daughter to think about. I can't just blow up my life." "I'm not suggesting you blow up anything. I'm suggesting you build something new, something that makes you happy." He cupped my face in his hands. "You're an amazing woman, Morwenna. You deserve a partner who sees that, who celebrates it, not someone who treats you like a piece of furniture." When I got home that evening, I found Elliot in the kitchen making dinner for Tess. He looked up when I walked in, his expression neutral. "You're late," he observed. "Traffic was terrible," I lied smoothly. "Sorry. What are we having?" "Spaghetti. Tess already ate. I saved you a plate." The domesticity of it, him cooking, saving me dinner, taking care of our daughter, should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it irritated me. This was exactly what Jonas was talking about. Elliot was going through the motions of being a husband and father, but where was the passion? Where was the connection? "Thanks," I said, accepting the plate he handed me. "How was your day?" "Fine. How was yours?" And that was it. The extent of our conversation. No curiosity about what had kept me late. No interest in sharing details of his own day. No attempt to bridge the growing chasm between us. I ate my spaghetti in silence, while Elliot helped Tess with her homework at the kitchen table. Watching them together, his patient explanations of long division, her giggles when he made silly voices for the word problems, I felt like an outsider looking in on someone else's family. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. "Already missing you. When can I see you again?" I smiled despite myself, typing back, "Soon, I promise." "Good news?" Elliot asked, not looking up from Tess's math worksheet. "Just Jill," I said automatically. "She's having boy trouble again." It was becoming my default excuse for any text that made me smile, any phone call that lasted longer than 5 minutes, any unexplained happiness that crossed my face. Poor Jill was apparently the most dramatic person alive, according to my cover stories. Later that evening, after Tess was in bed, I called my sister for real. I needed to talk to someone who understood what I was going through. "You sound different," Jill said immediately. "Happier. What's going on?" "I think I'm falling in love," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. With Jonas? Yes. God, Jill, I know how that sounds, but I can't help it. He makes me feel alive again. He makes me feel like I matter. Of course you matter, and honestly, it's about time you realized it. How long has it been since Elliot made you feel that way? I can't even remember. Maybe never, not like this. Then you have your answer, Jill said firmly. Life is too short to waste it on someone who doesn't appreciate what he has. You deserve to be happy, Morwenna. You deserve to be loved the way you want to be loved. But what about Tess? What about the disruption to her life? Kids are resilient. And honestly, is it better for her to grow up watching her parents go through the motions of a loveless marriage? You'd be showing her that it's okay to choose happiness, that it's okay to demand more from life. After I hung up with Jill, I felt more confident about my choices. Jill was right. I did deserve happiness. I deserved to be with someone who valued me, who made me feel beautiful and interesting and worthwhile. But my confidence was shaken the next morning when my mother called. Morwenna, honey, I've been thinking about our conversation last week, and I'm worried about you. Worried how? You don't sound like yourself. You sound like someone trying to convince herself of something. Mom, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Are you? Because Barbara Pierce called me yesterday. My blood turned to ice. She what? She's concerned about you and Elliot. She said there was some kind of scene at dinner Sunday night, and that you've seemed distant lately. Barbara Pierce needs to mind her own business, I snapped. And so do you, frankly. I'm a grown woman. I don't need my mother-in-law monitoring my behavior and reporting back to my mother. Sweetheart, she's not monitoring anything. She's worried about her son, and about Tess. She said you were texting someone during dinner and that you made some concerning comments about finding connection elsewhere. I made comments about emotional needs not being met in marriage. If that's concerning to Barbara, maybe she should ask herself why her son is so emotionally unavailable. Morwenna, Mum's voice was gentle but firm, are you having an affair? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, deflect, get angry at the accusation, or I could tell the truth to someone who loved me unconditionally. I'm finding emotional support outside my marriage, I said carefully. Elliot checked out of our relationship years ago, Mum. He's a good father and a reliable provider, but he's a terrible husband. I'm not going to apologize for finding connection with someone who actually cares about my thoughts and feelings. The silence stretched so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. Oh, honey, Mom finally said, and her voice was full of sadness. What are you doing? I'm taking care of myself for once. I'm prioritizing my own happiness instead of everyone else's comfort. And what about Tess's happiness? What about the vows you made? Tess will be fine, and as for vows, they go both ways, Mom. Elliot broke his promise to love and cherish me a long time ago. I'm just finally admitting it. When I hung up, I felt shaky and defensive. Why was everyone so quick to blame me? Where was their concern when I was lonely and neglected in my marriage? Where was their outrage when Elliot treated me like a roommate instead of a wife? I texted Jonas, "Can you meet me for lunch today? I need to see you." His response was immediate. "Of course, everything okay?" "Just family drama. Nothing I can't handle." But as I got dressed for work, I caught sight of myself in the bedroom mirror. For just a moment, I saw myself the way others might see me. A married woman sneaking around, lying to her family, justifying an emotional affair by blaming her husband's shortcomings. The image made me uncomfortable, so I looked away. That afternoon, Jonas held me while I cried about the phone call with my mother, about Barbara's interference, about feeling like everyone was against me. "They don't understand what you've been going through," he said, stroking my hair. "They don't see how neglected you've been, how starved for affection and attention. Of course they're going to defend the status quo. It's easier than admitting they've been blind to your suffering." "I just wish someone would ask how I'm doing instead of lecturing me about what I should be doing," I said. "I'm asking," Jonas said, tilting my chin up so I had to look at him. "How are you doing, Morwenna? What do you need?" "I need this," I whispered. "I need you. I need to feel like I matter to someone." "You matter to me," he said, and then he kissed me. It was our first real kiss, and it felt like coming home and running away at the same time. When we broke apart, I was crying again, but this time from relief instead of frustration. "I'm falling in love with you," I admitted. "I'm already there," he replied. That evening, I came home to find Elliot sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "About the fact that I know you're having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay calm. Elliot's voice was matter-of-fact, almost conversational, which somehow made it worse than if he'd been yelling. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, setting my purse down on the counter with deliberate care. "Jonas Field," Elliot said, consulting one of the papers in front of him. "Freelance graphic designer, lives at 412 Maple Street, apartment 3B. You've been to his apartment twice this week." My mouth went dry. "Have you been following me?" "I haven't had to. You've been remarkably careless about covering your tracks." He gestured to the papers. Phone records showing daily calls and texts. Bank statements showing charges at restaurants and coffee shops during times when you claim to be working late. And then there's this. He held up his phone, showing me a photo. It was me and Jonas, taken through the window of the coffee shop where we'd been meeting. We were holding hands across the table, leaning toward each other intimately. "Where did you get that?" I demanded. "Does it matter? The point is, I know, Morwenna. I've known for weeks. The question now is what we're going to do about it." I felt cornered, exposed, but also strangely relieved. The pretending was exhausting. Maybe it was time for honesty. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. "Yes, I've been seeing Jonas. Emotionally, not physically. And you know what? I'm not sorry. For the first time in years, someone makes me feel valued and appreciated. Someone actually listens when I talk, cares about my thoughts and feelings, makes me feel like I'm worth their time and attention." Elliot nodded as if I'd confirmed something he already knew. "So, this is my fault." "I didn't say that." "Didn't you? You just listed all the ways I've failed as a husband. You're having an emotional affair because I don't listen, don't appreciate you, don't make you feel valued." "Well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." I felt a surge of anger. "You want to make me the villain here, but you created this situation, Elliot. You checked out of our marriage years ago. You treat me like a roommate, like a business partner, like anything except the woman you supposedly love. So forgive me if I found comfort somewhere else." "Comfort," he repeated. "Is that what you call it?" "Yes, comfort. Emotional support, connection. All the things a wife should get from her husband, but apparently has to find elsewhere when her husband is more interested in his laptop than his family." Elliot was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers in front of him. "You're right," he said finally. I blinked, not sure I'd heard correctly. "What?" "You're right. I have been distant. I have been focused on work. I haven't been the husband you needed." He looked up at me, and I was surprised to see pain in his eyes instead of anger. "I thought I was being responsible, providing for our family, being the stable foundation you and Tess could count on. I didn't realize that wasn't enough." His admission should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, it made me feel empty. "Elliot, but here's what I don't understand," he continued. "If you were unhappy, if you felt neglected, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me what you needed instead of finding it somewhere else?" "I tried. I've been trying for months to get your attention, to make you see that we were drifting apart, but you were always too busy, too tired, too focused on other things." "When?" he asked. "When did you try to talk to me about this?" I opened my mouth to answer, and then closed it again. When had I tried to talk to him? Really tried, not just made sarcastic comments or passive-aggressive remarks. It shouldn't be my job to teach you how to be a husband, I said instead. Some things should be obvious. Like what? Like asking about my day. Like showing interest in my life. Like making me feel like you actually want me around instead of just tolerating my presence. Elliot nodded slowly. You're right. I should have done those things. I should have been more attentive, more emotionally available. I should have made you feel loved and valued every day. Again, his agreement felt hollow instead of satisfying. But, he continued, you should have talked to me before you started talking to someone else. You should have given me a chance to fix things before you decided they were unfixable. Would you have listened? Really listened, not just nodded and gone back to your computer? I guess we'll never know, will we? My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. Thinking about you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Without thinking, I picked it up and read it, smiling slightly at his sweet words. When I looked up, Elliot was watching me. Really, he said, you're going to check messages from your affair partner while we're having this conversation? It's not an affair, I protested. We haven't, it's just emotional support. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question. How do you? Because you light up when you talk about him. Because you smile at your phone when he texts. Because you look at him the way you used to look at me. The pain in his voice was unmistakable now, and it made me feel defensive instead of guilty. Maybe that should tell you something about the state of our marriage. It does tell me something. It tells me that my wife has already checked out. It tells me that while I was working to support our family, you were building a relationship with someone else. It tells me that instead of fighting for our marriage, you decided to replace it. I didn't replace anything. I found friendship and emotional connection that was missing from my marriage. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with carrying on an emotional affair. Nothing wrong with lying to your husband and daughter. Nothing wrong with planning a future with another man while you're still married to me. I never said anything about planning a future. Didn't you? Elliot pulled out his phone and started reading. I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. Someday we'll be able to be together openly. I'm tired of pretending this isn't real. Should I go on? My face burned with embarrassment and anger. You've been reading my private messages? Your private messages on our shared phone plan. Messages you've been sending on my dime, from the phone I pay for, while living in the house I provide. Oh, so now you're going to throw money in my face? That's really attractive, Elliot. I'm not throwing anything in your face. I'm pointing out that you've been using the resources of our marriage to conduct an affair. It's not an affair, I shouted, finally losing my temper. God, you're so dramatic. I have a friend who actually cares about me, who actually wants to spend time with me, who actually makes me feel good about myself. I'm sorry if that threatens your ego, but maybe you should look at why your wife had to find emotional support somewhere else instead of attacking me for finding it. Elliot stared at me for a long moment, his face completely expressionless. Then he started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was bitter, hollow, the sound of someone who'd just realized something terrible and inevitable. What's so funny? I demanded. You, he said, still laughing. This whole situation. The fact that you can stand there and justify betraying your marriage, lying to your family, and emotionally cheating on your husband by blaming me for not being psychic enough to know what you needed without being told. I'm not justifying anything. I'm explaining. You're rationalizing. There's a difference. He stood up, gathering his papers. You know what, Morwenna? You're right. You do deserve better. You deserve someone who appreciates your particular brand of honesty and accountability. And I deserve someone who doesn't think marriage is a backup plan while they shop around for something better. Where are you going? To my parents' house. I need some time to think about what comes next. You're running away? How typical. Elliot stopped in the doorway and turned back to me. I'm not running away. I'm making space so I can figure out how to protect my daughter from the fallout of her mother's choices. Protect her from me? I'm her mother. You're a woman who's been lying to her family for months while carrying on an emotional affair. You're a woman who just spent 20 minutes justifying betrayal instead of acknowledging it. You're a woman who thinks her husband asking for basic honesty is an attack on her character. His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. So yes, I need to think about how to protect Tess from the example you're setting and the chaos you're about to create. After he left, I sat in the kitchen staring at the papers he'd left behind. Phone records, bank statements, printed screenshots of text messages, evidence of my relationship with Jonas laid out like a criminal case. I called Jill, needing someone to remind me that I wasn't the monster Elliot was making me out to be. "He's trying to manipulate you," she said after I'd told her about the confrontation, "making you feel guilty for finding happiness outside a dead marriage. Don't let him gaslight you into thinking you're the problem here." But what if he's right? What if I should have tried harder to fix things before I got involved with Jonas? "Morwenna, listen to me. You tried for years to get that man's attention. You begged him to connect with you, to be present in your marriage, to treat you like a wife instead of a piece of furniture. He ignored you, so you found someone who didn't ignore you, someone who saw your worth and valued your company. There's nothing wrong with that. Elliot thinks I should have given him an ultimatum or something, demanded marriage counseling. And then what? Spent thousands of dollars and months of your life trying to force someone to love you the way you deserve to be loved. No, honey. You can't negotiate desire. You can't counsel someone into being emotionally available. Either they want to be with you or they don't, and Elliot's actions showed you exactly where you stood." After talking to Jill, I felt better. She was right. I had tried to connect with Elliot, maybe not through formal conversations or ultimatums, but through countless small attempts to engage him, to draw him out, to make him see that our marriage was dying. It wasn't my fault that he'd been too oblivious or too stubborn to respond. I texted Jonas, "Can I come over? I need to see you." "Of course. Everything okay?" "Elliot knows about us. We had a big fight. I just need to be somewhere I feel safe." "Come over right now. I'll take care of you." As I drove to Jonas's apartment, I felt a sense of relief washing over me. The pretending was over. The sneaking around was done. Now I could focus on building something real with someone who actually wanted me. I had no idea that Elliot was already 3 steps ahead of me, and that my relief was about to turn into the worst nightmare of my life. The next morning, I woke up in Jonas's bed, feeling more at peace than I had in months. No more lies, no more sneaking around, no more pretending my marriage was something it wasn't. The truth was finally out, and while it was painful, it was also liberating. Jonas brought me coffee in bed, real coffee, not the instant stuff Elliot and I kept in our kitchen, and kissed my forehead like I was precious cargo. "How are you feeling?" he asked, settling beside me. "Free," I said, and meant it. Scared, but free. "What happens now?" "I guess Elliot and I will have to figure out custody arrangements, divide our assets, all that practical stuff. It won't be easy, but it's better than living a lie." "And us?" I smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "We get to find out what this looks like when we don't have to hide." I stayed at Jonas's apartment until mid-morning, then reluctantly went home to shower and change for work. The house felt different, emptier somehow, even though Elliot's absence was barely noticeable. His coffee mug wasn't in the sink, his laptop wasn't charging on the kitchen counter, but otherwise everything looked exactly the same. I was surprised to find Tess sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas. "Sweetheart, why aren't you dressed for school?" "Daddy said I didn't have to go today. He said we're having a family meeting." My stomach dropped. "Where is Daddy?" "He's coming back soon. He went to get Grandma and Grandpa." Before I could process what that meant, I heard cars pulling into our driveway. Through the front window, I saw Elliot getting out of his sedan, followed by his parents climbing out of Derek's truck. Behind them was another car I didn't recognize. Elliot walked in first, carrying a manila folder and wearing an expression I'd never seen before. calm, determined, and utterly cold. "Morwenna," he said with a polite nod, like I was a business associate instead of his wife. "Thank you for being here." Barbara and Derek followed him in, neither of them making eye contact with me. Barbara went straight to Tess, gathering her into a hug. "What's going on?" I demanded. "We're having the conversation we should have had months ago," Elliot said. "But first, I'd like you to meet my lawyer." A woman in her 50s walked through the door, carrying a briefcase and wearing the kind of expensive suit that meant serious business. She extended her hand to me with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Pierce, I'm Patricia Newman. I represent your husband in this matter." "What matter?" I looked from the lawyer to Elliot to his parents. "What is this?" "This," Elliot said, opening his manila folder, "is a comprehensive documentation of your affair with Jonas Field, along with evidence of financial misconduct and neglect of parental duties." He spread papers across our kitchen table, like he was dealing cards. Phone records, bank statements, photographs, printouts of text messages, and things I didn't even recognize. "You've been conducting an emotional and physical affair for approximately 6 weeks," Patricia Newman said, consulting her notes. "During this time, you've used marital funds to finance your relationship, lied to your family about your whereabouts, and neglected your responsibilities as a mother." "That's not— I never," I sputtered, looking at the evidence spread before me. "How did you get all this?" "Phone records are available to the account holder," Elliot said calmly. "Bank statements are marital property. The photographs were taken in public places where you had no expectation of privacy." I picked up one of the photos. It showed me and Jonas kissing outside his apartment building last night. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. "You had me followed?" "I hired a private investigator after you made it clear at my parents' dinner that you were involved with someone else. I needed to know the extent of the relationship for legal purposes." "Legal purposes?" My voice was getting shrill. "Elliot, what are you doing?" Patricia Newman opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "Mrs. Pierce, these are divorce papers. Your husband is filing for dissolution of marriage on grounds of adultery and abandonment of marital duties." The words hit me like a physical blow. Abandonment? I never abandoned anything. "You abandoned your marriage when you started an affair," Elliot said. "You abandoned your role as a wife when you chose to invest your emotional energy in another man. And you abandoned your responsibilities as a mother when you started spending your evenings and weekends with your affair partner instead of your daughter." "That's not true. I've always put Tess first." Elliot pulled out another set of papers. "These are Tess's school attendance records for the past 2 months. She's been late to school 17 times because you weren't home to get her ready. She's missed 2 parent-teacher conferences because you claimed to be working late. And according to her teacher's notes, she's been asking why Mommy doesn't come to school events anymore." I looked at Tess, who was sitting quietly in Barbara's lap, her eyes wide and confused. "Sweetheart, Mommy's been busy with work." "No," Elliot interrupted. "You've been busy with Jonas. There's a difference." Patricia Newman slid the divorce papers across the table to me. "Mr. Pierce is seeking primary custody of your daughter with supervised visitation for you until you can demonstrate that you're prioritizing her welfare over your extramarital relationship." "Supervised visitation?" I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "You can't take my daughter away from me." "I'm not taking her away," Elliot said. "I'm protecting her from the chaos you've created. I'm ensuring that she has at least one parent who's focused on her needs instead of their own desires." "This is insane. You can't punish me for finding happiness outside a dead marriage." "I'm not punishing you for finding happiness," Elliot replied. "I'm holding you accountable for how you chose to find it. You could have asked for a divorce before starting a relationship with someone else. You could have been honest about your unhappiness instead of lying and sneaking around. You could have put our daughter's needs first instead of pursuing an affair." Barbara spoke up for the first time. "Morwenna, we all tried to give you the benefit of the doubt. We hoped you were just going through a difficult time, that you'd come to your senses before things went too far. But you didn't, Derek added sadly. You chose to humiliate our son in public, lie to your family, and drag an innocent child through your marital problems. I never dragged Tess into anything. You dragged her into it the moment you started lying to her about where you were going and who you were with, Elliot said. You dragged her into it when you started coming home late and missing her school events. You dragged her into it when you made her watch her parents' marriage fall apart while pretending everything was fine. I looked around the room at all the faces staring at me. Elliot's cold and determined, his parents disappointed and sad, the lawyers professionally neutral, and Tess is confused and frightened. You're all acting like I'm some kind of monster, I said desperately. I made mistakes, yes, but I'm not a bad person. I'm not a bad mother. I needed something that wasn't here. And instead of addressing that need honestly, you chose deception, Patricia Newman said. Instead of working on your marriage or ending it honorably, you chose to have an affair. Those choices have consequences, Mrs. Pierce. She pulled out another document. This is a restraining order preventing Jonas Field from coming within 500 feet of your daughter or her school. We have evidence that you've brought Tess to his apartment and that he's been present during phone calls where you discussed intimate details of your marriage. What? No, I never... But even as I protested, I remembered the afternoon I'd picked Tess up from school and stopped by Jonas's place to grab something I'd left there, and the time she'd been in the car when Jonas called and I'd put him on speaker. We also have financial records showing that you've spent over $3,000 in marital funds on your affair, the lawyer continued. Restaurant bills, hotel charges, gifts, ride shares to his apartment. Your husband is seeking reimbursement for those funds as part of the divorce settlement. I felt like I was drowning. Elliot, please, can we talk about this privately, without all these people here? No, he said firmly. The time for private conversations was months ago, when you first started feeling disconnected from our marriage. The time for honesty was when I asked you directly if something was going on and you lied to my face. The time for working things out was before you decided to build a relationship with another man while still married to me. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 8 years of marriage without even trying to save it? Elliot was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer but no less determined. Morwenna, I would have tried to save our marriage if you'd given me the chance. If you'd told me you were unhappy. If you'd asked for counseling. If you'd been honest about what you needed, I would have moved heaven and earth to give it to you. But you didn't do any of those things. Instead, you found someone else to meet your needs while keeping me as a backup plan. That's not... It is exactly what you did. You kept me around to pay the bills and take care of Tess while you got your emotional and physical needs met elsewhere. You wanted the security of marriage with the excitement of an affair. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. I looked at Tess, who was crying now, though I wasn't sure she understood what was happening. What about her? I asked desperately. What about keeping our family together for her sake? What family? Elliot asked. The one where Mommy lies about where she's going? The one where Mommy smiles at her phone while ignoring her daughter? The one where Mommy and Daddy pretend to love each other while Mommy is actually in love with someone else? Kids need both parents, I insisted. You're right, they do. And Tess will have both parents. She'll have me full-time, providing stability and consistency. And she'll have you during supervised visits, once you've ended your affair and demonstrated that you can prioritize her needs over your own desires. Patricia Newman stood up, gathering her papers. Mrs. Pierce, you have 30 days to respond to these filings. I strongly recommend you retain your own counsel. This is a complex case with significant custody and financial implications. As the lawyer packed up her briefcase, I felt my world crumbling around me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the victim here, the neglected wife who finally found happiness. Instead, I was being painted as the villain, the cheating spouse who'd abandoned her family. Elliot, I said one last time, please don't do this. We can work this out. I'll end things with Jonas. We can go to counseling. We can start over. He looked at me with something that might have been pity. It's too late for that, Morwenna. You made your choice when you decided to lie to me for months. You made your choice when you chose to invest in another relationship instead of our marriage. You made your choice when you humiliated me in front of my family and then laughed about it. I never laughed. You laughed at my pain. You mocked my concerns. You dismissed my feelings and made me feel like I was crazy for noticing that my wife was having an affair. His voice remained calm, but I could see the hurt underneath. You treated me like I was stupid, like I deserved to be betrayed because I wasn't meeting your unspoken expectations. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, Elliot. I never meant for it to go this far. I know you didn't, but intentions don't erase actions, and actions have consequences. He picked up Tess, who wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. We'll be staying at my parents' house while you decide whether you want to fight this or settle amicably, he said. Either way, this marriage is over. The only question now is how much damage you want to do on your way out. As they filed out of the house, Elliot carrying our daughter, his parents following behind, the lawyer bringing up the rear, I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the evidence of my affair, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonas. How did the family meeting go? Are you free to celebrate your freedom? I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. For the first time in months, I wasn't sure I wanted to celebrate anything. 3 hours later, I was sitting in another lawyer's office, listening to a man in an expensive suit explain why my case was essentially hopeless. Mrs. Pierce, I'll be direct with you. Your husband has built an airtight case. The evidence of your affair is overwhelming, and the financial misconduct gives him additional leverage. Combined with the documentation of neglected parental duties, it's unlikely any judge would award you primary custody. But I'm her mother, I protested weakly. Being a biological parent doesn't automatically guarantee custody when there's evidence of adultery and neglect. The court's primary concern is the child's best interests, and your husband has made a compelling case that those interests are better served in his care. What are my options? You can fight for joint custody, but it will be expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately unsuccessful given the evidence against you. Your best option is to negotiate a settlement that gives you reasonable visitation rights in exchange for not contesting the divorce or custody arrangement. And if I don't agree, then this goes to trial, where all of this evidence becomes public record. Your affair, your lies, your financial misconduct, it all gets aired in open court. Your reputation will be destroyed. You'll spend tens of thousands in legal fees, and you'll likely end up with less than what your husband is currently offering. I left the lawyer's office in a daze. Everything I'd thought I wanted, freedom from my marriage, a chance to be with Jonas, a fresh start, had turned into a nightmare of legal consequences and public humiliation. When I got home, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note from Elliot. Morwenna, I've arranged for you to have supervised visits with Tess every other weekend, starting this Saturday. The supervisor will be my mother. If you want to see your daughter, you'll need to end your relationship with Jonas and demonstrate that you're focused on being a parent, not pursuing your affair. This is your choice. Choose wisely. Elliot. I crumpled the note and threw it across the room, then immediately picked it up and smoothed it out again. He was right. It was my choice. I just wasn't sure anymore which choice I could live with. 6 months later, I signed the divorce papers in Patricia Newman's office, agreeing to everything Elliot had asked for. Primary custody to him, supervised visitation for me, division of assets that left me with almost nothing, and a gag order preventing me from discussing the details of our marriage or divorce publicly. As I signed my name on the final page, Patricia Newman slid one last document across the table. "Your husband wanted me to give you this," she said. It was a copy of our original marriage certificate, with a note attached in Elliot's careful handwriting. "You asked me once when I stopped loving you. The truth is, I never did. I stopped trusting you, I stopped believing in us, and I stopped fighting for something you'd already given up on. But I never stopped loving you. I just finally learned to love myself more. I hope someday you figure out the difference between happiness and destruction, between love and selfishness, between freedom and responsibility. For Tessa's sake, if not your own. E." I stared at the note for a long time, tears blurring my vision. By the time I looked up, Patricia Newman had left the room, and I was alone with the wreckage of my choices. Jonas had broken up with me 3 months earlier, claiming he couldn't handle the drama of my divorce proceedings. My sister Jill had stopped taking my calls after I asked her to lie to a court-appointed investigator. My mother spoke to me only when it concerned Tess's welfare. I was free, just like I'd wanted. I'd never been more miserable in my life. As I walked out of the lawyer's office that day, clutching my copy of the divorce decree, I finally understood what Elliot had been trying to tell me all along. Actions have consequences, choices have costs, and sometimes, when you laugh at someone else's pain, you end up crying alone.